everyone. Thank you all for joining us for the first installment of the CEO Lecture Series for 2026. You all are all brave souls. I know that it's cold outside and there is a lot going on, but this is a very important topic that we'll be discussing this evening. I want to thank many of you who work alongside us in community advancement that I see in the room this evening. Sally Sears, also Claudette Leak, Beverly Dabney, and the entire beloved community of DeKalb County. So, this evening, our CEO Lecture Series, we always choose topics that are solution-driven, and they deal with issues that are important to the broad community. And housing is one of those issues. Housing is foundational, and it's also fundamental to healthy communities. It's tied to economic stability, public safety, as well as educational outcomes, health, and also generational wealth. And as our community continues to grow, we must be intentional about ensuring that growth is inclusive, equitable, and sustainable for the people who call DeKalb County home. So that is why affordable housing has been a central focus of my administration. Before we get started, I want to quickly share how tonight's conversation will work. When you arrived, you should have received an index card. Throughout the program, we invite you to use the card to write down any questions you may have. Throughout the evening, those cards will be monitored because we believe that many of the questions may be answered throughout the course of the conversation, but at the end of the program, we will stop and begin going through cards to answer questions. Any questions that we are unable to answer this evening, we will follow up with a group email to everyone who registered for the discussion this evening. So if you didn't receive a card at any point throughout the evening, please raise your hand and we will be more than happy to provide one for you. Tonight's conversation is especially timely because in the next few days, DeKalb County will host a 4-day NACA homeownership event that will run from Thursday, January 22nd through Sunday, January 25th. And this is a major opportunity for individuals across DeKalb and Metro Atlanta to become homeowners. This workshop will give you the resources that you need and the pathways to home ownership. And we are excited to welcome NACA into DeKalb County. And tonight's discussion will set the stage for what the opportunity means and what it matters. In DeKalb County, we are committed to home ownership. We understand for many individuals, particularly in Black and brown communities, 80% of wealth is directly linked to home ownership. If you own no home, you often have no wealth. So, we are seeing that increasingly hardworking Americans struggle with home ownership, and what we once called the American dream has become for many a dream deferred. So this evening we will work with you with pathways forward, and before I go further, I do want to acknowledge those members of the governing authority who've joined us. I see our Madam Presiding Officer, our District 4 Commissioner, Shakira Johnson, who has joined us this evening. And if there are any other members of the Board of Commissioners, please stand. So thank you so much for taking the time out to join us. So to begin tonight's program, I'm honored to introduce someone who plays a critical role in voicing and advancing home ownership in DeKalb County. Dr. Alan Ferguson. Dr. Ferguson is DeKalb County's first Chief Housing Officer. This is a position that I created in my administration, and it brings focus and coordination as well as accountability to a long-term plan for housing and unhoused issues. Dr. Ferguson is a nationally recognized leader in affordable housing and community development with more than 2 decades of experience across real estate, public finance, and neighborhood investment. Prior to joining DeKalb County, he served as Chief Housing and Real Estate Officer for the Atlanta Housing, where he helped deliver thousands of affordable housing units and advance citywide housing goals, resulting in more than 30,000 units being developed. He has also led Habitat for Humanity in Atlanta, where he served in senior roles at Investment Atlanta, as well as worked at the intersection of housing policy and capital investments at both the local and national level. Most importantly, Dr. Ferguson is a product of South DeKalb. He is a native who understands this work is not just professional, but it's also very personal. So please join me in welcoming our Chief Housing Officer, Dr. Alan Ferguson, as he presents an overview of the state of housing in DeKalb County. Thank you, Dr. Ferguson.
Thank you.
And I think you know the routine.
All right, good evening. Good evening. And thank you, Madam CEO, for the introduction. So just to kind of set the stage, I want to give some context around housing and really housing across the United States, a national kind of perspective, and then bring it down to here in DeKalb County. So since 1982, from where this data has been tracked, where we've landed is that there's roughly about a 3 million unit shortage of homes. 3 million homes, we're 3 million homes short of demand of what's needed. And this data goes through 2022, but it's been pretty consistent since then. We're running about just over 3 million units short nationwide. That corresponds to what we've seen over in the housing market in terms of increasing home prices. So if you look at the chart that is to your right, you'll see that red line keeps going up and up. That's tracking home values since 2012. And that data right there ends in 2024, and you see nationwide the median home value is over $400,000. Couple that with the increases in rents, that we've seen. So this data goes back to 1940 all the way up into what's projected for 2025. You see the meteoric rises in rents that have occurred. So home values increasing, rents increasing, the supply of housing has not risen to meet that demand. And then so we look at, well, what's happening at the federal level and how is the federal government, helping to support this issue. So you see on the left side, these yellow bars represents the decrease in federal funding that was occurring on an annual basis. The blue bars represent the increases in federal funding that's been going on since roughly about fiscal year 18. But even with those recent increases, we're still about $6 billion short of where funding was back in fiscal year 2011, all right? So even though they've increased funding in recent years, it's still $6 billion short from where it was well over a decade ago. And then, there's this issue around housing assistance, and in particular, tenant housing assistance, so voucher programs. And you'll see that since 1980, there really hasn't been a material difference, a material increase in the number of vouchers that have been available. That's going back for 40 years. That voucher assistance hasn't increased. There was an uptick during COVID. And during the COVID years, they increased the number of vouchers by 66,000. That's 66,000 across the country. To give you a sense of what that means, I can point to 3 counties here in the metropolitan area, including DeKalb, that if you brought them 66,000 today, vouchers today, they would still have a waiting list combined. So it just hasn't been a sufficient amount of investment in tenant assistance and rent assistance. So all of this has combined, to really create this systemic issue that we found across the country in terms of housing and a housing crisis. A decade plus ago, we used to talk in terms of, oh, there's an affordable housing crisis. But I think now it is completely fair to say that the U.S. is in a housing crisis. We don't have enough housing that people can afford across the income spectrum for everyone. And it affects everyone. So why does it matter? Well, here in DeKalb County, we're trying to catch up here. What we're trying to reinforce are a number of different things. First and foremost, housing stability. We know that housing stability, is one of the pillars, if you will, for supporting our health. It supports, our educational environments. The data shows that when there's housing stability, children perform better in school, as well as employment. Having a stable place to live really assists people in maintaining steady employment. Rising housing costs, affect families all across the county. As I mentioned previously, this housing crisis is affecting households across the income spectrum. And many households here in DeKalb County are cost burdened. So according to the latest American Community Survey, which is a survey that's done every 2 years, almost 40% of the households in DeKalb County reported that they were cost burdened. That means that they were spending more than 30% of their income on housing. And when you go down the income ladder to those who are low income and very low income, that percentage of their household income that they're spending on housing goes as high as 65 and 75%. So it's really affecting, our most vulnerable residents the most. And then housing challenges really impact the quality of life and community strength. When you have housing instability, within our neighborhoods, transient families, it affects everyone. When you talk about bringing in those services and amenities like grocery stores and things of that nature, having an unstable housing community affects the ability to attract those types of amenities. When you talk about the performance of local schools and students being transient and moving from place to place, that affects student performance, that affects the performance of our local schools. So it really affects a variety of different aspects of our quality of life. So for DeKalb County, we have a vision. We have a vision of what we're trying to accomplish, not in years to come, but what we're trying to do right now in 2026. And it revolves around more access, more choices, and having stronger communities. We're really trying to create a platform for stability, opportunity, and resident empowerment. And I'll dive into that right now. So in our vision, it's all about, expansion, improving access to safe, quality housing, increasing our housing choice across neighborhoods, stabilizing communities and reducing displacement, and empowering our residents with pathways to long-term housing stability. So when we talk about expanding access to housing and supply, it revolves around a number of activities that we're undertaking and beginning this year. So first and foremost, we want to increase production and the preservation of our affordable housing and attainable housing here within the county. We're really working hard, and you'll hear in the coming weeks, we're going to propose bringing forth some tools and some resources to do just that. And we'll be sharing more information around those tools, especially to our residents and our communities, on how they can impact to create more housing opportunity within the county. We want to activate our county-owned land and underutilized properties. When we have, properties that are underutilized in our communities, those properties can be converted to a productive use, and one of those productive uses is housing. So you're going to see us begin a very deliberate and targeted program to activate land that we currently don't use to put that to better use for creating more housing opportunity. We're going to invest local resources, including, what I kind of foreshadowed, creation of a housing investment bond. We need resources now to make an immediate scalable impact in the housing arena. I want to applaud our Board of Commissioners and the support of our Madam CEO for advancing the Affordable Housing Fund. That's the first effort in the county to create some dedicated resources towards affordable housing. But there's more to come, and you'll be hearing more in the coming weeks around what we're proposing in regards to a housing investment bond. And then also preservation. We have some units in DeKalb County that are actually good, quality, naturally occurring affordable housing. So we want to make sure that those properties remain affordable, but remain in good quality, for the long term. And that prevents the loss of those units, and it prevents us from exacerbating the affordable housing challenge. And so you'll see us investing a lot in the preservation in the coming years. We're also going to center a lot of our activities around resident empowerment. So very soon, you'll see us roll out really a countywide program to offer more financial literacy and more credit building opportunities. They say education is power, so we want to make sure that our residents are empowered with the full breadth of really understanding how to maintain their household budgets, how to really determine what their housing costs are, and also giving them all of the resources so that they can build their credit, so they can get access to some of the mortgage products and programs that we're going to bring forth and that you'll hear a little bit later about tonight, so they can take advantage of all of those different opportunities coming forth. Providing homeownership and housing counseling. A lot of people, especially our first-time home buyers, and even in 2026, you'll find that they've never gone through an experience, even within a family member, of owning their own home. So it can be a very daunting experience, and so we want to lower those barriers by making sure that we offer that homeownership counseling, as well as facilitating opportunities, for homeownership. And that not only includes providing financing and facilitating financing, but also eventually the actual development and creation of affordable homes here in the county. We want to increase access to down payment assistance. So as a part of the proposal that I'm going to bring forth is going to include an enhanced down payment assistance program, because we fully recognize that there are several down payment assistance programs out there. Not all of them work together. So we're going to put forth a program that's able to be layered and work cooperatively with other programs to deliver more down payment assistance so that we can make homeownership more attainable and more affordable. And then supporting long-term housing and financial stability. There's one thing to get into a home. There's another conversation around how do you maintain your home for the long term. And so we're going to invest in deepening and broadening access to what I describe as home care services. So think about it this way. For every person who has a leaky faucet, or your kids are playing in the house and they kick a hole in your drywall, it's going to cost you hundreds of dollars to have someone come out and fix that. But if you're trained, or you've at least been exposed to doing that yourself, then you complete that repair and you save those hundreds of dollars to put forth in educating your kids, providing, additional services, all of those different things that add to the quality of life. And so we're really going to focus on expanding those home care services here in DeKalb County as well. So stabilizing housing and preventing displacement. Again, we're going to implement some anti-displacement and housing stabilization programs. I know there's a lot of concern in terms of how the demographics are changing in places within the county. And so we want to get ahead of that curve and implement programs that allows our residents and our legacy residents to remain in place and to participate and enjoy the change instead of being victimized of it. Preserving and rehabilitating existing homes and apartments. I touched a little bit on, preserving multifamily, but our legacy residents, they have homes that need preserving too. So you're going to see us roll out a really strong owner-occupied rehab program. We currently have one that's in place that's been administered for several years by our community development department, led by our director, Alan Mitchell. But it only goes so far in terms of the amount of repairs and the types of repairs that they can perform. So we're going to create an enhanced program that can add to that so we can get to deeper levels of repairs for our most vulnerable residents. And speaking of that, we're going to prioritize our seniors, veterans, persons with disabilities, and low-income households when it comes to preservation. When you think about the preservation of home ownership, those are the populations that are most vulnerable to that leaky roof causing them to completely lose their home. So we want to make sure that we prioritize those populations. And then supporting residents that are at risk of housing loss. One of the best ways to keep people in their homes is to keep people in their homes. So you're going to find us providing additional resources to expand that housing assistance that helps families and helps households deal with those immediate emergencies that could lead to a situation of displacement. So there's been a lot of conversation. You've probably seen information and news reports regarding extended stay hotels, and particularly in DeKalb County. Just a couple of weeks ago, a report was released by the organization Spark, where they did a needs assessment for those staying in extended stay hotels. So we're actually, implementing an extended stay hotel strategy. So first and foremost, we're taking a look at extended stay hotels and seeing how we can convert those to single room occupancy units, for individuals. When you look at those units and who's staying there, they actually can serve a very valuable purpose. And there are a lot of individuals who, can stay in a single room occupancy unit, but we just don't want them paying the prices that they pay in extended stay hotels. And for families who are staying in extended stay hotels, we want to make sure that we provide safe, private housing for underhoused individuals as well. So many of you may have heard about the investment that the county made along with in partnership of the Housing Authority of DeKalb County and Park 500. And so within that complex and that acquisition that's currently undergoing renovation, the county secured 60 units for families that were previously underhoused to put them in conventional housing. It was a tremendous effort. It really occurred miraculously in a very short amount of time, all things considered. And that's something that we want to try to repeat in terms of making those units available. We want to reduce barriers for families moving into conventional housing. And so as you dig into the information around families staying in extended stay hotels, you understand that not all of their barriers are financial. Some of their barriers, quite frankly, are challenges with the system. They had an eviction on their record, and so now no one will rent to them. They went through, a domestic issue or a divorce, and so they have a bankruptcy on their record, and now no one will rent to them. So we want to make sure that we address some of those challenges that are non-financial by providing really strong supportive services and working with private owners to open up access to those units. And then we also want to create pathways to temporary housing, from temporary housing to permanent homes. So once someone enters into those environments, we want to make sure that they're receiving strong wraparound services to continue to support them so that eventually we can move them into a conventional environment, including providing pathways for home ownership. So you're also going to see us making sure that we stay in contact and we're providing, clear and transparent information, to the public. So already we've begun aligning our county departments and partner agencies. Just this past Friday, we had our first, what I call our interagency housing council, where not only we brought departments across the board from DeKalb County, but we brought our partner agencies, we brought MARTA, we brought representatives from DeKalb County Public Schools, all to the table to talk about stakeholder issues regarding housing. And the feedback from that meeting was, first and foremost, this was one of the first times that all of them had been together to talk about housing. But the second thing was that they wanted the conversation to continue. So we're looking forward to continuing that path. Coordinating planning, funding, and implementation. You're going to see more about the platform that we're trying to build to actually make it easier to get housing done within the county by having a coordinated effort here within the county. We're going to track our progress, and then we're going to use data and dashboards to ensure accountability. So think of a website where once we put forth all of the programs that we're implementing and the goals that we have in regards to housing, preservation, all of our activities, you'll be able to go onto that website at DeKalbCounty.gov and see exactly where we are each and every month. We want to ensure accountability, but more importantly, we want to have that transparency and have that trust with you, our residents, that this is an issue that we're focused on and this is an issue that we're performing on. And so what does all this mean, for our residents? We're going to end up with more housing options at different price points, more support to those to remain housed, expanded access to counseling and education, and definitely clearer paths to long-term stability in housing. And with that, I appreciate your time this evening and coming out for this presentation. We've got a lot of exciting things in the housing arena coming down the pike, and we want to hear from you, so please stay engaged and let us know how we can be supportive of your efforts. So thank you.
At this time, all of the panel members are going to join us for a conversation. And at this time, I'd like to invite up, and I'll also be joining you gentlemen. We'll start with Mr. Bruce Marks, the CEO of NACA, and he is here. And NACA is the Neighborhood Assistance Corporation of America, also known as NACA. Bruce has spent more than 30 years as one of the nation's most influential housing activists and advocates. His life work has been centered on one simple but powerful goal: making home ownership accessible to working families and communities that have historically been excluded from the American dream. Bruce has challenged predatory lending practices. He's also warned Congress of the mortgage crisis years before it occurred, and designed groundbreaking programs that have helped hundreds of thousands of families avoid foreclosure and achieve sustainable home ownership. Under his leadership, NACA has become a national model for affordable, responsible lending, and we are very proud to welcome that work to DeKalb County this week. We know you could be anywhere, Bruce, but thank you for joining us here in DeKalb County. Next, I'd like to welcome to the stage Jacob Vallo. Jacob is another first in DeKalb. He is DeKalb County's first Chief Development Officer. Jacob brings more than 25 years of experience in real estate development, capital improvement, and public-private partnerships across both the public as well as the private sectors. His career includes leadership roles at organizations such as MARTA, Jamestown, Hines, and the Rockefeller Group. Also, the West Side Future Fund. Jacob's work is guided by a deep understanding that development must balance strong returns with meaningful community impact, particularly when it comes to affordable housing, mixed-use development, and long-range economic opportunities. And I will join the gentleman at this time. Hopefully my independent mic is ready to go. And Bruce, since you've traveled so far to be with us this evening, and we're very excited to have your presence as well as your deep knowledge in the area of housing, I'd like to begin my first question with you. From your perspective, what are the biggest obstacles to home ownership today, and how does NACA's model directly address those challenges?
It is great to be here. Thank you for having me, CEO. Let me ask people in the audience first, before I answer that. How many people have heard about NACA? If you can raise your hand. Virtually everybody. And how many people here were at the Georgia World Congress Center in 2010 during the mortgage crisis, where we had over 23,000 people on one day, homeowners with NACA working to save their homes? So you remember that? And how many people here in 1996, when we had the largest home ownership workshop in American history, does anybody remember that? Absolutely.
And let me say, Bruce, I remember at that time, I was with the Atlanta Daily World covering those events. And for many of us that are here today, you know, I remember that economic downturn when the bubble burst, when people across America had been given mortgages that honestly they couldn't afford.
Absolutely.
Orms and balloons, and then those debts became payable. And I can remember watching on television and covering those seminars, and it was absolutely mind-blowing. And, you know, I'd like to hear from you as to where you feel we're headed. There's a lot to talk about here in America with what we are currently seeing, because I've often said in many environments, people that are sitting in this room, if we were forced to purchase our homes under the current market terms, we couldn't afford to rebuy the homes we live in if they were placed on the market.
Mm-hmm. So I just have to just give you 1 second to just tell two stories, okay, if I could. So when we were doing, so during the mortgage crisis, because I testified in Congress on September 12th of 2000, and it was in front of the House Financial Services Committee. And I said that this mortgage crisis was going to happen because those mortgages were structured to fail. It was a home ownership deception scheme. And how do we know that? Because people could afford the initial mortgage, because those payments were affordable. Mm-hmm. But then when you looked at the paperwork, those mortgages were going to double and triple in payments. So someone who could afford a $1,500 a month mortgage payment, could they afford a $3,000 a month mortgage payment or a $5,000 a month mortgage payment? No, so it was structured to fail. So we got all the lenders on board through the activism we did and the operations. So in Georgia, you know, so we had a massive event. We had over 40,000 people come, but in one day, 23,000 people. So we're outside, it's hot, it's over 90 degrees, we're in line, everybody's waiting to, you know, get in, because they're there because we're able to modify mortgages so people would save over $1,000 many in a monthly mortgage payments, because we had all the lenders there. So I'm there, I'm outside, and all of a sudden this black SUV pulls up, you know, these two guys come out, open the doors and throw me in the back of the van. And they said, and they bring me to, you know, to the Georgia Dome, because people had lined up all the way from the World Congress Center to the Georgia Dome and said, how are you going to solve this? And we're going to shut it down. And we said to them, if you shut it down, you're going to have a riot on your hands. And so we didn't shut it down. We got everybody in, and we helped over 500,000 homeowners save their homes during the mortgage crisis. And we're also an activist organization, so the first Tuesday of every month, they do the foreclosures on the courthouse steps. And so we're protesting that, and, I get arrested and others get arrested, and, the sergeant tells his, he tells his deputy, to take me out of the cop car, the police car, and let me loose because he wanted to modify his house. And we got his house modified for a 2% interest rate and reduced the outstanding principal. So we have a lot of friends in important places. But now to answer your question about what are the roadblocks, remember what built the white middle class? It was the no down payment mortgage, VA mortgage after World War II. But it was the white middle class that was built because, as we know, people of color could not access that mortgage or buy those properties. So what NACA has done is we've taken that concept of no down payment, of no closing cost, of no fees, of no mortgage insurance, which is a scam, and without consideration of one's credit score, because those three numbers do not define somebody, at a below market fixed rate. So that's the NACA mortgage, and we can say factually it's the best mortgage in America because we're licensed as a nonprofit mortgage broker in all 50 states. And the regulators sometimes come in and they say, how can you say it's the best mortgage in America? And we tell them, do your homework. They do their homework and they say NACA is the only organization that can say we have the best mortgage in America. So if you go to our website, NACA.com, today's interest rate is 5.25% for a 30-year fixed, 4.75 for a 15 or 20-year fixed. And you can get that even lower. And remember, it's not based on someone's credit score. It's based on people's individual circumstances. So we have $20 billion of this Best in America mortgage, $15 billion from Bank of America. And we've done over 75,000 mortgages. We have a foreclosure rate of 0.00012. So we have demonstrated that when you do counseling the right way, and remember, we're a nonprofit housing counseling organization. We're the largest in the country. There are 1,500. We do over 30% of the counseling in the country, and we're thrilled to work in partnership with DeKalb County because that's how it works. So we're thrilled. So thank you for inviting us. Thank you. And what we're going to do in partnership with you, starting on Thursday, if I can talk about that.
Oh, absolutely. That is why everyone is here. And you will begin to see us push through all of the media channels. We'll be holding a press conference. I want to be clear. I am for housing for everyone, but I represent DeKalb County. DeKalb first. So it is my intent to do everything humanly possible because I have to be very honest. With a lot of what I'm seeing, Bruce, I have concerns that current relationships and funding may change in the future.
Right.
That's a very real possibility. So it was really important for us to act as swiftly as we can. So I want everyone to show up because you're talking about below prime rates.
And what we're talking about during these 4 days, someone comes in for one day, just one day, and they go through all 4 steps of the process. So they would go through a workshop, which is about 3 hours, step 1. Step 2, upload your whatever documents you have and put in your information into a kiosk. That's step 2. Meet one-on-one with a NACA counselor to deal with your individual circumstances on that comprehensive counseling, step 3. And step 4, meet with the NACA mortgage specialist to be qualified that day for NACA's Best in America mortgage or your next steps. So everybody that comes, and we make the commitment. You stick with this program, you can either be qualified, pre-approved in one day, or what your next steps are. And I can only say, I started NACA 40 years ago. I can only say that NACA was a real success about 5-6 years ago. because we would do these, what we call Achieve the Dream events. We did the Save the Dream events during the mortgage crisis for home owners. But for home buyers, we started doing these Achieve the Dream events. About 5, 6 years ago, we started doing this, and we didn't know what was going to happen. But then we would get 5, 10, 20,000 people over 4 days, sometimes 25,000 like in Newark, New Jersey, with no outreach, with no media, with all about people telling their friends, their neighbors, their co-workers, for affordable home ownership, you come to NACA. Because we don't believe in marketing, because what is marketing? That's trying to convince somebody to do something or buy something they were not ordinarily inclined to do. We believe and respect the people that come through. If we do it the right way, people will tell others that they should come. And that's the best reflection of the organization, that we do it the right way and people will tell others and it builds on itself. That's how we know we're going to have 10, 15,000 people or more over the 4 days, but we make the commitment. We will see everybody, and everybody who comes, we'll see them through. So yes, we do it from 8 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, till midnight. We don't turn anybody away. So we've got this. So if someone wants to be a homeowner on the best terms in America, they need to come. So please tell others.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And now I'm going to go to you, Jacob. How does the availability of affordable and attainable, because there's a difference between being affordable and attainable. And I think that it's very important we start to ensure that affordability is determined by place. There's a lot of factors that goes into what's affordable. So I often like to use the word attainable housing, impact economic development, workforce stability, and business attraction in DeKalb County, and also how housing being integrated into the county's broader economic, how is it being integrated into our broader economic development strategy?
All right, softball question. So first of all, great to be with everybody this evening, and blessed to be with all y'all. I think it's probably appropriate to start with, we use the terms economic development often, but it's probably fair to give a bit of a definition. I think that, in DeKalb we define economic development as attracting new investment into the county, and that new investment creates tax revenue, of course, and then that revenue can be used to support, to go back into the community to support programs like Alan had shared that we're working on, and many others. But it also, economic development is about job creation and quality job creation. And so those are the two sort of levers we're trying to pull when we talk about economic development. Those are our North Stars, if you will. And when you're trying to attract employers, they're looking for a workforce that's trained and skilled, but they're also looking for a workforce that can live in close proximity to the workplace. And that's when you begin to talk about this stratifying what is affordable housing, what is attainable housing. And it kind of goes back to Dr. Ferguson's point that we're really in a point in the cycle where we need all types of housing in DeKalb. And if we can deliver all types of housing in DeKalb, it'll attract employers who are looking for their employees to have these types of housing options. I can't remember the second part of the question.
Well, I want, as you started to talk, there's a lot of great things going on in DeKalb. And I'd like for you and Dr. Ferguson to talk about where we are with MARTA, because, oftentimes we use the word TOD. And for us, that's transit-oriented development. And at our major mobility centers, they provide a wealth of opportunity for the creation of housing.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's talk about that, because we are coming off a great year of calling in everything that's been due to DeKalb. So this year we have built 2 clinics. We completed, the extension of the animal shelter, and it just goes on. And we have made some huge investments in terms of purchasing certain tracts of land that we know will be integral to future development in DeKalb. because it's time we're intentional and we take actions from an economic development perspective that will begin the revitalization of corridors, in particular Memorial Drive and Candler Road.
That's right.
Talk specifically about what's happening with MARTA and those developments.
So one win last year was acquiring 4380 Memorial, which is in close proximity. I think it's a little bit less than a half mile from the Kensington MARTA station. And why we like TOD, or transit-oriented development, is because it's sort of a multiplier effect. You can have affordable rents, but you can also have affordable transportation costs because you live so close to transit options. So as you're looking at your monthly statement, being closer to a transit station and having the ability to live there can create benefits from freeing up cash flow for other things, for your kids and other things. So we love TOD from that perspective. So we're looking at developments all along the Memorial Corridor, but the 4380 transaction is significant because now we own the property. We're leasing it for 20 plus years.
28.
We own it 28 years. And now we have the opportunity to, as public stewards of land, to develop that property. And just because it's close to the train station, it's also TOD. So it's a tremendous opportunity. Checks a lot of boxes, TOD. It ignites the Memorial Drive revitalization coming from the Kensington station and heading east. So we're really excited about starting the design work this year for that 24 acres. It's a significant site. I think the Atlanta Regional Commission did a Livable Centers Initiative study back in 2012, and I believe there was like 3,000 units they could put on the site. Yeah. I don't know if we'll end up there, but there's a lot of density that could go on that site. Switching to Candler Road, as many of you know, there's some significant redevelopment opportunities on Candler Road. Can't talk too much about them at the moment, but as we think about going back to CEO's question about MARTA, so there's a MARTA arterial rapid transit project that's slated for Candler Road. And as we look at each of the individual stops along that ART, as it's called, we're looking for opportunities to invest and really use the transit investment as a catalyst for us to build more housing around these proposed ART stops. And Dr. Ferguson mentioned it earlier, the housing investment bond. So this bond can be a tool, which we don't, and the county's never really had a tool like this before. So we're super excited about, again, Madam CEO and the Board of Commissioners approving this, because we have a lot of redevelopment that needs to occur along Memorial and Candler. And the math is such that there's gaps in the capital stack to make the math and the projects work. So having a tool like the housing investment bond for housing projects and some of the other tools we're thinking about launching for economic development will allow us to accelerate the revitalization. So the good thing is Alan's done this, I've done this before, so we're just kind of bringing it to DeKalb, which gives me a lot of confidence and certainty that we can execute.
And thank you for that. And actually, Dr. Ferguson, I have you next, bringing it back to housing policy and local action. Many DeKalb County residents are feeling the pressure of rising rent and home prices. What specific actions is the county taking right now to ensure that working families, seniors, and young adults can afford to live and remain in their communities? Because we are having, and we are very concerned, we want to make sure in particular that legacy residents are secure. And I do want to also talk about the ability to freeze tax rates on homes, because what we're seeing in some communities is gentrification and a rise in property tax assessments. And as a result, we want seniors, disabled, as well as veterans to know that if your tax liability on that home rises, then if you will go to our tax commissioner's office and you are able to demonstrate that nothing has changed with my income, your taxes will freeze. They will remain where they are. Now, at which time that home transfers, whomever becomes the owner is now liable for the proper tax assessment. However, it takes care of the current resident. So I want to make sure that everyone in this room understands, because I am very sensitive to the fact that we have a lot of seniors and disabled and individuals who are seeing a rise in tax digest.
That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And Madam CEO, thanks, for bringing that to the table, because, that is a real policy issue that we can take on as a county to make sure that we have, our legacy residents remain in place by, freezing their property taxes. Because if you think about it, they're a legacy homeowner because they've been in the county for decades contributing to the system. And because their neighborhood starts to change, they're not pressured, being displaced, all because of the changes going on in the community. But to answer your broader question, the different initiatives that we're bringing forth, you heard me mention, expanded owner-occupied rehab program. So we're looking at, bringing owner-occupied rehab and an enhanced program so that we can provide a deeper level of repairs. Right now, the current program that we offer, really supports about, $15,000 in repairs. A decade ago, you could do a lot more with that. Now, $15,000 can barely, replace a roof. So we're coming back with a new program, an enhanced program that we can layer on top of that so that we can provide a deeper level of repairs, including providing modifications to home so that our legacy residents, our seniors, can age in place as well. Because, we've got, very fortunately, in DeKalb County, we've got a lot of housing stock that is really suitable for seniors to age in place, or a lot of ranch-style homes, that don't have a lot of stairs. And so we want to make sure that those homes, remain accessible. In regards to, reducing rents, one of the best ways that we can try to reduce rents is to increase supply. We need to provide more housing options, to our residents, and that means increasing the supply of homes. So you're going to see us lean really hard into production. That means, producing new units that are going to be, traditionally affordable as well as workforce affordable. It's not lost on us, as I mentioned previously, that affordability affects, families across the income spectrum. And so we want to make sure that we're providing such a number of workforce housing units to support that growing workforce that we want, here in DeKalb County. And then third, but definitely not least, the down payment assistance resources that we're looking to bring forth in the county. Again, traditional programs just really haven't kept pace, if you will, in regards to, how much housing costs. Years ago, a $10,000 in down payment assistance could get you a long way. Now, it really doesn't help that much in terms of a home purchase. So we're coming out with an enhanced program that you can use to layer our program along with other programs to get a significant amount of down payment assistance to help bring down the entry costs of those homes. And I would dare say, combined with the power of a NACA mortgage, and including some modifications that we're going to allow in this new program that'll help you buy down your interest rate, it's a strong opportunity to create deeper levels of affordability and accessibility, attainability, for our homes. And particularly because I don't think a lot of people know this, but people think that the NACA program is for low to moderate income, households and homeowners. But actually, you can serve prospective home buyers across the income spectrum. So I don't know, Bruce, if you want to talk a little bit about who you actually serve.
And Bruce can't wait to hop in. There's one thing I want to say, though, because I sit here and I have to watch the numbers and the dollars. And everything that we talk about is truly dependent upon ongoing federal funding. DeKalb County receives over 250. I see COO Zach Williams in the corner in federal funding. And it's through federal programs that we're able to provide the programs through community development for home revitalization. So I always have to predicate every day, you know, with things changing as they do. Everything that we say is dependent on our ability to continue receiving the funds that we are able to directly make available to you. Yeah. And go ahead and join in, Bruce.
So I just want to add one thing. How many people here know that they're renting from a corporate landlord? If you raise your hand.
And you know it.
So what it is, you know, just to build on what Alan is saying, when you look at the lack of affordable home ownership, if you look in the greater Atlanta area, there's over 30,000 properties that are owned by these corporate Wall Street landlords. Over 30,000.
And let me add that DeKalb is one of the hardest hit. We were also one of the hardest hit counties in the state of Georgia during the downturn of the economic crisis, the housing bubble. And we settled a lawsuit as a result of it here in the county that we aren't to talk about. But nonetheless, we have seen a disproportionate amount of LLCs, Wall Street, and private investors. And to localize this for you, because you and I have talked a lot about legislation too, and I want to bring that up, because this problem is bigger than just elected officials. This is also a battle that has to be fought under the Gold Dome. And years ago, at least 5 years ago, as the commissioner, I put forth legislation requesting a rental rate cap, because history repeats itself. In DC, New York, LA, certain major cities, Philadelphia currently has the most stringent rental rate cap in the United States. And they cap rental rates at 3.5% year over year. On average, most major cities cap it at 5%, meaning if you are a corporate entity, a landlord, you can only raise rent 5% year over year. But in Metro Atlanta in 2020 and 2021, we saw a 20% and then a 15%, 36% rental increase over the course of a 2-year period. And that is not sustainable, nor is it realistic. We are creating American homeless. And the face of American homeless looks like us.
Yeah.
In order to survive, if you earn minimum wage, and those are hard-working jobs that someone has to do and we rely on those services, you would have to work, Bruce, according to a study that I had completed at Ernst & Young, 140 hours a week in order to earn a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment in Metro Atlanta on minimum wage. Mm-hmm. So now.
You're absolutely right. So the only thing that I would add to that is that what we want to do is, so we've identified over 70, so we did a mailing to 70,000 tenants in Georgia. We've identified over 800,000 tenants around the country who are renting from the largest corporate Wall Street landlords, Blackstone, Invitation Homes, those, absolutely, Progressive, those players out there. Yeah. So that's a campaign. So they're the new predators. So they learned from the mortgage crisis. They said, instead of doing mortgage-backed securities, let's actually own the properties. So that's the campaign that we have to engage in. So when Alan's talking about the 3 million units that we are missing, you know where those units are for home ownership? Owned by these corporate predatory Wall Street landlords. So we have to do this. So we can talk about buying a house. We can talk about going through the mortgage process. We can talk about getting NACA qualified for the best mortgage in America. But when you go out and you do the housing search and you find that house that you love and that you want to live in, but some corporate Wall Street landlord investor is going to buy it for cash and undercut your ability. And when you're talking about neighborhood stability, when you talk about crime, well, who's the best crime fighter? It's a homeowner. It's a homeowner who's going to protect their property and their neighborhood. Who stabilizes the neighborhoods? It is the homeowners. not these corporate landlords. So what we're going to have legislation, we're going to file it on Thursday. It's called the Neighborhood Ownership, Transparency, and Accountability Act, the NACA, not in my backyard.
And I am really excited about this because, you know, and I want to be very fair in saying I believe in capitalism, but I also understand the detriment of what we are seeing in real time. When you create a landscape where people plain and simply cannot provide for their families, there is a lack of housing, you have increased crime, and there is a spiraling effect that ultimately ends at everyone's front door in this auditorium. So we have to be wiser because we are seeing the face of homelessness, even in our extended stay hotels, drastically change. So I'm really excited, and I can't wait to get down there because now this is a fight that I believe is absolutely necessary.
Absolutely.
And we didn't make it very far. I have about 3 pages of questions, but I'm now going to go to your questions. And the first is, my South DeKalb community has been resisting changes that may help housing, but are from outside investors that feel exploitive to make a quick profit rather than help long term. How do we tell the difference in helpful change versus harmful change in our community? Thank you, Steve. And this question is to Alan.
Yeah. So one of the things, and you know, I've been in different rooms and I spent a lot of time in rooms with developers and investors. And one of the things that I emphasize, you know, to them is that community engagement is key. Going out, talking to the neighborhood and finding out what do the residents want? What does the community want, you know, from this particular project, from this particular development, and then embracing, you know, that feedback so that they can have a successful, you know, project. So, you know, the thing about, you know, being here in, you know, DeKalb County is that for those developers and those investors, they really don't have a place, if you will, you know, to start. Well, in the chief housing, you know, officer role, I'm creating that place for them to start. And one of the things that I'm going to create as far as this platform of community engagement is making sure that we're connected to our board of commissioners so we can connect to the local neighborhoods and the local communities to make sure that community engagement, you know, happens. And if it doesn't happen, that's going to slow down the process for them in terms of getting resources and support from the county to move their projects forward. And in today's market, almost universally, every developer is looking for some type of support or some type of resource from the county in order to move their projects forward. So we're going to make sure that that community engagement happens, and it happens before they break ground on the project and not after, so that the community has a voice in supporting and understanding what's about to happen in their neighborhood.
And if I can add just one thing to what Alan is saying, is that we've mapped out the over 70,000 properties owned by these corporate Wall Street investors in Georgia and the over 800,000. So we're going to provide that to the county and to you, so anybody can go onto the site and see who owns your property, who owns your neighbor's properties. And so you'll see that what they do is it's a concentration. So they really control and dominate and set the rents for everybody in that neighborhood. So they manipulate the market. So that information that Alan is saying and that the CEO is going to use when a developer comes to DeKalb County and saying, I want this and I want that, they're going to be able to say, well, wait a second, let's look at what you own in DeKalb County. Let's see how you treat your tenants in DeKalb County, and maybe we should have a second look at the assistance that you've gotten and whether you should get more.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And As I look across the room, I know many faces. I see several real estate agents and real estate professionals who are here. And I want to be very clear when I say that the solution isn't owned here, it's owned out here with all of us. Because people look to government to do for them what they often can't do for themselves. But the truth of the matter is, the DeKalb Housing Authority is technically our housing partner. Until we invested in 500 Park Place, DeKalb County's first rapid housing, DeKalb County does not own housing. We rely on partners. So we need developers who have the capacity to build, to come forward, and allow us to work with you on everything from LIHTC, low-income housing tax credits, to marketplace housing. We've been very clear here in saying that it's not a one-prone solution. We need all types of housing in DeKalb County.
Can I add one more thing? I'm sorry. Two things I forgot to say that are really important. First thing is that someone who has a Section 8 housing choice voucher can use that voucher instead of paying for rent to pay for a mortgage. So that means in less than 20 years, for someone who has very little wealth, if any wealth, they can generate $200,000-$300,000 in wealth using that Section 8 housing choice voucher for the mortgage payment. Because that standard, that money that goes to the landlord is significant. And it will allow someone to be able to purchase a $300,000 or $400,000 property. That's number one. Number two is we're building housing. So we're building beautiful modular housing. We did the first housing in Selma, Alabama. This is, so for example, some of these houses are three bedroom, 2 baths, 1,450 square foot, 9-foot ceilings. They're beautiful modular housing that we are able to sell to people for less than $170,000 with no government subsidies. So yes, so what you hear from DeKalb County and from your CEO is that they have land. They have land, and so in Selma, we were able to get the land from the city of Selma and from the Housing Authority, and that we can get true affordable home ownership for the current residents. So for a mortgage payment of about $1,100, they own that house outright. And that's the model that we're thrilled to work with in partnership with DeKalb County.
Yes, and also let us say that, the one thing that we want to point out, because the marketplace has shifted. Back in our day, we wanted a single-family residential home. Well, now, oftentimes buyers, they prefer more density. Yeah. The newer generation doesn't particularly want what we may have. And oftentimes that causes a rift, because when there is a submission for a certain type of project, the NIMBY occurs. Not in my backyard. I don't want that. Well, I want us to look at things with an open mind. Yeah. But also I want to say that what we found is smaller doesn't always mean more affordable. When you look at the cost per square foot for often cottage homes and tiny homes, you're paying more. So we are being very cautious with what we see to ensure that it is truly a benefit to the community. And the next question that I have is, how can I get repairs done where I live? My apartments are owned by Lithonia Housing Authority. I've made reports to the office and also code enforcement to no avail. Can you please point me in the direction for next steps? I have leaks in the ceiling over my daughter's bed with mold, and there are terrible electrical issues. Take out your pen or your phone. My email address is lcjohnson@DeKalbCountyGA.gov. That's lcjohnson@DeKalbCountyGA.gov. If you will email me tomorrow, I will have the Department of Public Health come out, because what you've described to me is a matter of public health. because there is an issue with mold. And I will directly email the Lithonia Housing Authority, and we will work towards getting you the help you need. It is an abomination that landlords will receive rent and not handle standard repairs. Next question, where will the funds come from to rehab housing that will experience displacement? Will this increase real estate taxes? No. As I said, what we pass on to you, because technically DeKalb County is in the business of delivering essential services. Sanitation, water, what am I missing here? The parks and recreation, roads, those are the things that we do. So when we're passing on money to you, and honestly, we don't operate in the green in many of our essential services. We're just hoping to break even. So don't believe that we have this storehouse of cash that sits around. Everything we receive, we are putting it back into the community. So with that, as I expressed earlier, many of the things that we sit here and say is reliant upon federal funding that comes from the federal down to the state or directly to the counties. So no, it will not affect your taxes, your real estate taxes. It's just a matter of how long will those monies continue, and we certainly hope that they will. Next, please share more about what it will take to accomplish the freezing of property taxes for legacy residents. That is a trip to the tax commissioner's office. There are certain documents that are necessary, so feel free again to either call our office or call the tax assessor and indicate that you are a senior, you have received a tax bill. And I do want to emphasize, it's important that you act during the period of time that's necessary to challenge the assessment. If you allow that date to pass, there's nothing we can do, and you will own responsibility for that tax assessment for that year, okay? So let's act expeditiously. As a top producing realtor in DeKalb, a lot of clients get denials when they use DPA and other resources. How can NACA compete as it pertains to closing timelines, contingencies, and appraisals so buyers can actually win in this market? And I'm not sure what the DPA is, but down payment assistance. Okay,
Yeah.
so now we can know.
Yeah. So one of the criticisms of NACA was that it takes too long to get through the process. Yeah. So what we have done, because our counselors, they were spending 2 or 3 hours on when someone was coming in, putting in their information and uploading their documents. So what we did is we said, let's flip that. Let's put together a state-of-the-art system where our members, we call them members, where the participants would put in their own information. They would upload the documents based on their individual circumstances. And so that's how we're able now to get loans closed within 28 days of the executed purchase and sale. So what you want to be able to do as an organization is take a negative and make it into a positive. So yes, so now we have factually the best mortgage in America, but also the fastest process, because we were a victim of our own success. When you have 20,000 people coming to an event, you had to figure out how to be able to do that. With 3.7 million members, you have to figure out how you can do it on scale. So we have developed a way to do that. So now the counselor, now a member, a participant, they control the process. So if they do their job and the system is customized, so for example, if one is self-employed, it's a 1099. If someone is, a W-2, then you need a pay stub. So the system is customized to whatever the particular circumstances are for that home buyer. So that means that that person can get qualified in 1 day, or it might take a month if they don't follow up with everything they need, or whatever. But the home buyer controls that process. And so, and for the down payment assistance programs and all that, that's working in partnership with DeKalb County. That's working in partnership, so you streamline that, because it shouldn't be necessary to provide the same documents to us than it does to the county. We need to verify that. So what we do is we set up a portal with the county so that they can access those documents and people can see that. Because you're right, you got to streamline this process, because if you're going to get sellers to accept the deals, you're going to get the real estate agents to work with you, you've got to make it a streamlined, transparent process. So that's what we've done. So I say to anybody, because I understand that some people, they have been frustrated in the past. Get it. But now, go through this process now, and it's the fastest process in the mortgage industry.
And I want to make sure, too, from my team, that we have included the documents so that when you arrive, you are bringing along what you need. So show up prepared so that we can move expeditiously. Now, the next question: with all of the new plans to build more houses, how will you ensure that you aren't creating food deserts? This is a great question. And let me say to you, the way to prevent food deserts is the building of the new homes. Mm-hmm. Many of you may be aware that starting in 2019, the conversation, and I'm thankful you all brought me back as your CEO to see it through completion, but we are getting a Publix on Candler and Glenwood, okay? And that took quite some time because we went through the pandemic, and the conversation stopped and we had to pick up the ball. But when it comes to economic development, and Jacob, you know this better than me, it is a mathematical, there is a science. If you give a location of where you want any business, there's two concerns: the amount of homes within a quarter-mile radius and the median household income. And those two things will tell you whether or not you meet the economic viability. So by increasing the density, it better suits and moves the community towards having what's necessary in order to recruit more industry. So Jacob?
I couldn't have said it any better. No, you're exactly right. So, we have several relationships with retail brokers that represent grocery stores, and they're actively looking throughout the county, and they were very explicit and transparent with us that this is basically the math. And so, as there's more density that comes into the county, but thoughtful density in the right product, it'll help make the math work for these grocery stores. So,
yes.
I have a question. Have you looked at malls out there buying any of these the vacant malls, and in terms of being able to, because it seems like that those are ideal places to build affordable housing, and also where you can have the retail and food and all that.
Well, let me say, I have my eyes on one mall.
Okay.
yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And actually, it's interesting you'd say that, because it looks like a mixed-use development in the dream that I have.
Yeah.
And honestly, we really can't talk about it at the moment, but we do.
The answer is yes.
We certainly support you doing that. So whatever we need to do, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, but it's a great idea, and we've actually had some internal conversations around, how can we as a county address, this food desert, issue, this food desert challenge. And one of the things that we're considering is, the county actually owning the property, owning the real estate, and inviting the grocers in to be the operator. And, so that lowers their cost. Because they don't have to invest in building a new store. They come in and they operate, and we provide that service and that access, to the community. So we're not leaving any idea off the table.
That would be a model for the country. So yes,
yeah, we think so. We think so.
And let me say also, sitting where we sit, you know, the community has a responsibility as well, because we have seen the closure of Sam's and certain restaurants due to pilferage. And, you know, that's a fancy word for theft.
Yep.
And the margins don't work. So I just have to say, it does us no good to sit here and fight to recruit. We have to own and take pride in the businesses that do business in our community. And we have to do good business. So I can't emphasize that enough. Now, have you selected any specific big banks to collaborate with to increase the amount of down payment assistance programs that can be layered for first-time home buyers? I will say that many of you know that back in 2019, PNC Bank Operation Hope came to the table, and they provided low interest loans below market rates, and we were able to push through the door over $20 million in first-time home loans and down payment assistance. To be honest, it's a matter of corporate consciousness. I'm sure, Bruce, you can attest to the fact that the people that are providing you the mortgage support, they have made a conscious effort because they care. But
yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we certainly support and we appreciate Bank of America, which has committed $15 billion to this Best in America mortgage, and others need to follow suit out there. And, you know, I think it's really important. I mean, we need the government funds. That's absolutely essential. But I just also want to reinforce that what we do at NACA is a private sector initiative, so that, you know, even when those funds are cut off, we're still able to do what we're doing and expand what we're doing. But we need those corporations to step up, and we need the government to step up. But look, really appreciative, because what DeKalb County is doing is stepping up, because in the end, it's always local. It's always local. It's code enforcement, down payment assistance, all that, and that's what really gets the job done, and we certainly appreciate that partnership.
yeah, and I have to say too, you know, across the federal level, we continue to use the term, let's make America great again. And I want to say that the way to make America great again is to make America work again.
Yep.
Because economics is at the core of all the issues that we sit here and discuss this evening. So job recruitment and also education. If we're able to ensure, because there's 18 free trades in the state of Georgia with a high school diploma. And many of those start individuals at a higher salary than a 4-year degree without the debt, because these are free trades. So when we talk about bringing jobs to America, we have to create a landscape, and we have to educate a workforce, particularly in production, because we don't produce, we consume. But I've not heard us have that serious conversation across America in terms of how do we begin production and how are we unified in it.
And if I can just add, one of the things is, if someone buys a house, they can buy a house, and after they close, they can have funds set aside for the renovation of that property, which is a big deal. And the people doing that work are from the community, so you're building the trades, you're building that economic vitality in your neighborhood. Yeah.
And ending blight, because currently, and I know we didn't have time, Dr. Ferguson, but I just signed off on an entire stack of properties to be sold through our land bank. And when I say to you, I funded the land bank back in 2019.
Yep.
And it's taken me coming back now and us finally pushing that cart. But those homes will be sold at market value so that we can get them in the hands of homeowners and back onto productive tax roll. We want your taxes.
Yeah.
And we want you to have those properties and honestly have pride in them. And I know that we're pretty much out of time, but this question, can something be done to stop or reverse corporate landlords, cap exorbitant application fees, and outlaw biased tenant screening? I will say that under the Gold Dome, legislation was passed that does cap application fees, and I can send out that link to you. When it comes to biased tenant screening, to be honest, you know, that's a slippery slope, because if people want to be biased, there's a million ways. But there are laws against it.
But the other piece is going back to the advocacy, going back to taking on, because we got to expose. So when you talk about Blackstone, well, who is Blackstone? Who are the individuals who are making the decisions? So even though, you know, let me just say this, NACA is an advocacy organization. So when we took on the mortgage predators out there, we went to the CEO's homes in a nonviolent way to hold them personally accountable. We need to go to these decision makers' homes in their gated communities, because who are the people who are providing the services for those CEOs in those bubbles? We're doing that. And we got to confront them and saying, you're taking our home, you're exploiting us, we're generating wealth for you. So we have to do that aggressive, nonviolent advocacy to hold the CEOs personally accountable for their actions.
And it's even deeper, because when we had the conversation, one of the things that I found, many of you in here through your employers may participate in a 401k or some type of investment sharing, where there is a group that will invest your funds, a pension fund. Pension funds are one of the #1 contributors to LLCs, Wall Street, and private investors, and the purchase of single-family residential homes.
That's exactly right.
I repeat, there are some of us in this room who may be funding what we don't realize. You need to check with your employer to determine how your pension funds are being invested, because they just might be being invested in the purchase of real estate in your community that turns single-family residential homes into corporate entities. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I believe on the state level, there needs to be a disclosure.
Yep.
So laws are very important here. Alan, this was for you. Will Mr. Ferguson create an HOA compliance council to better ensure transparency, accountability, and compliance? I don't think you can do that.
Yeah. The answer is yes. We can create a framework for HOA to really not only to promote just good stewardship, but also to promote good education with our residents and our homeowners around HOAs, what the rules are, what the conditions are, and to really establish good governance, and good governance that's sustainable over time. So yes, I'm open to creating that type of body within DeKalb County.
Okay, and actually, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to hold a workshop. If we're educating people, that's the most we can do, because we can't force the compliance.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where my initial statement comes from. Now, how is DeKalb County actively partnering with cities to align strategies, funding, and zoning tools? What mechanisms are in place to ensure county programs actually reach neighborhoods and are equitable? Martha is not here. She is our Chief of Intergovernmental Relations, and she works with our cities. But we always have to be very forthright in saying that the cities have their own charters. We work with you to what extent you want to be worked with.
Yeah.
Because most cities have their own master housing plan. And, to what extent, we often share best practices that we have. But around the issue of the unhoused, I've seen us come together in a unique way, because DeKalb County is primarily responsible. So with that, I don't know if anyone wants to add anything, but these are conversations that our cities should be having, and we welcome them to the table when we're having our discussion, but they're not bound by our policies or what Dr. Ferguson creates for DeKalb.
Yeah, absolutely. And but we are doing and are going to expand our reach per se, to do some proactive outreach to the cities, to try to create as much alignment as possible as we look at, this whole housing, ecosystem. So there's already a body, if you will, of, stakeholders and advocates and different parties that gathers here in DeKalb County called the DeKalb Housing Roundtable. And through that roundtable, a number of different cities have, kind of shown up and participated in those conversations. And so I'm looking forward to seeing that expanded and enhanced, and also us creating, some more structure, if you will, around having, regular, communication and collaboration, with the cities. So again, we can be aligned in trying to advance, housing efforts. Madam CEO, said it plainly, they have their own charters. We can want to try to create, places and spaces of affordability, throughout the county, but we're going to need that partnership with the cities in order to do that and help facilitate that. And so that's what we're looking forward to, expanding those types of partnerships.
And I know, Jacob, there has been conversations with at least one city that is in desperate need of affordable housing. And we have brought in a partner who was particularly interested in developing for that particular community, because they are also immigrants, and wanted to ensure that there is affordable, safe, clean housing. So we're completely open to helping all. And also there's a question as to, are we creating programs that will give opportunities to the local businesses to partner with the county to support the initiatives being shared today? For example, repair services, absolutely. Through our Community Development Office, there's an RFP, an RFQ that goes out, and we do employ local repair companies that we are sending into the homes to provide the work, because that's not a service that our facilities department provides. Our facilities department only works with our buildings across the county. Believe it or not, we only have 2 or 3 more questions. What is the county doing to enforce code violations? I work with first-time home buyers who don't want to live in certain areas of DeKalb because of junk cars, trash, and overgrown weeds. Glad you asked. When I started office January 2nd of 2025, we were averaging 69 citations per month. We were running municipal court twice per week. I'm happy to announce that we are now averaging 250 citations per month, and we have expanded our court to 4 days because of the amount of people that we're getting through the courts. And I want to say to you, I drive and I look up and down our roads. We are beginning to look different. In many areas, we are beginning to see DeKalb look different. We actively enforce, and also we change the nature of code compliance from being a 9 to 5 to 9 to 8 p.m. because we found that a lot of violations occur after hours. So we're gonna get you. If you send me an email, we will get you, and we will hold you accountable, and we will bring you into court expeditiously. As part of the housing strategy, is DeKalb County considering alternative ownership models such as community land trusts, cooperatives, etc., in addition to simple and traditional ownership?
Yes, we are. Actually, I want to say in February, we're going to launch a request for proposals for a feasibility study, regarding a community land trust. And again, it's a feasibility study, so what we're really hoping to glean from that is, does a community land trust model make sense for DeKalb County? And if it does make sense, what are the best practices? What are the things that we should look to incorporate and include, in that model? Again, going back to one of the previous questions around the cities, we can create a community land trust, for unincorporated DeKalb, but it's going to require that partnership and that buy-in with the cities to actually have something that's able to work countywide. So that RFP for a feasibility study, again, is going to be released in February, and we're looking forward to getting some strong responses and getting that study completed this year. But definitely looking at opportunities for community land trusts, other types of cooperative ownership, and those types of models to not only create the opportunity for ownership, but create the opportunity for long-term stewardship of housing.
Well, I was feeling good until JP approached me with this stack, because we only had one question, and I'm going to answer that, and then we will just send out an email with these. How are residents, current homeowners, and future homeowners educated on keeping their home in the family, particularly when homeowners pass away? Our probate court holds an annual workshop on successorship. So we always advertise that in our newsletters. And also, I want to say that you have to be very careful, because many legacy residents are approached by LLCs, Wall Street private investors, and unscrupulous people. So we educate them on, usually the person that knocks on the door isn't the one that you want to sell the home to. There's licensed real estate agents, and we encourage our seniors to reach out to a licensed professional. And the last card, they actually wrote my closing notes. Ladies and gentlemen, questions not answered tonight will be posted on the county website with the answers. Thank you for attending tonight's lecture series on the state of housing. We look forward to seeing you become a homeowner in DeKalb County. Thank you. Thank you all so much. And we will answer these questions and get them out for you. And let's tell everyone we are looking for 10,000 people over the course of the next 4 days.
Absolutely.
Let's make this successful, because it's very important to act now. Many of you, if you don't own, and the thing about tonight, most of you here are already homeowners. The people that we need to reach probably aren't sitting here. And that's what I find across DeKalb. That's why no hands went up when it came to renting.
Right.
Because you aren't that audience. So help us reach others. Hopefully everyone here is receiving the newsletter. If you aren't, transfer our newsletter to your churches, to your synagogues, to your HOAs, because we have to get the word out. Thank you all.